and welcome to the third and our last episode of Familial Footprints, a podcast where we talk about parents and the impact on their children. And in this episode, we talk about narcissism with Noelle. Hello.
Hi.
Can you maybe introduce yourself, your age, children, job?
My name is Noella. I'm 54. I work as a secretary at the University of Leuven. I have 3 kids, 3 boys, twins of 22 and one of 19. The youngest one is currently attending college, is doing pharmaceutical sciences. The 2 eldest are in, how must I say, having more difficulties. They started in life with autism and ADHD, and they did not cope so well in my previous marriages, plural actually. My eldest, the eldest of the twins, they're 22 now, and the eldest one is currently working part-time, doing dishes at a restaurant, and the other one is still at home, hasn't been able to do any kind of a job actually because of his mental issues, and they are partly to blame on the narcissistic relationship, so a big part actually. So myself am currently engaged to get married for a 3rd time.
Congratulations.
Thank you. The relationship that we are going to talk about was during 10 years, and was with, in the beginning I thought it was just an alcoholic, but it appeared it was actually narcissism that got worse by the alcohol. So.
Okay, and can you maybe talk a bit about how that relationship went? What were some things that happened where you say, okay, this is really some narcissism that you see in the relationship?
Well, as always, narcissistic relationships start out very romantic, and he was like Prince Charming who came to my rescue after my first marriage, and it developed very quickly. It was within 2 weeks, I think, after our first date, that he actually moved in with me. He was still married with his previous wife at the time, but he said they already decided to separate, and he didn't want to live with her anymore, so he came to live with me. And I was like, okay, it's a bit quick, but yeah, I suppose we're in love, so I guess. It was like I was really overwhelmed, and but I was in love. I thought it's okay, it's fine, it's wonderful, but there were already very early warning signs. His mood tended to shift very abruptly from being, well, let's say, a normal person to, I always compared it to Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It was like one moment he was fine, and the other moment it was like, where did this devil come from? Then of course the drinking. In the beginning it was like, okay, he likes a glass of wine, but a glass of wine went to a bottle of wine, went to 2 bottles of wine. And it happened every evening, and I ended up very quickly being abused every day. It was like we were having a conversation, a dinner, he started drinking, and in the beginning it was fine, he was nice, he was sweet. And then all of a sudden he would like stare, and then he shifted. And then it was like he started talking about his ex-wives, and actually taking me as the persona of his ex-wives. So he started attacking me for stuff I had nothing to do with. And then mostly he fell asleep, and then the next day it was like nothing happened. Not even an apology. And when I tried to talk about it, it was like, yeah, I'm sorry, I had a bad day at the office, or I was thinking about the stuff. He recently had a bankruptcy, and he was like, I suffer from this, or I struggle with that, and it was always like there was always an explanation, but not really an apology. It was like always an excuse. And then everything went on again as normal. And then the same evening, or perhaps next evening, all started all over again. And yeah, it was very difficult also for my children. He tended to be very authoritarian, or how do you call it in English? Very, yeah, like a tyrant. Actually, he was. He thought children were supposed to be brought up like, yeah, you have to tell them this and they have to obey. And I had two children with autism, and I told him it doesn't work that way. And before our relationship, I explained it to him that they have autism. You have to handle them a certain way. And he said, "Yeah, yeah, don't worry. I'll follow your lead when we'll be together." But yeah, of course, he didn't. I think he tried to. Um, uh, he tried to um, pretend to be following my lead, but very quickly he took the lead and he started attacking them verbally and telling them to do this, to that, and they were like, no, it didn't work. The youngest was at the time he was 8, and he rebelled in a way of calling him names. But I thought was okay. That's not fine either. He was rather heavy. My ex-husband then, and yeah, my youngest child started to calling him names, and I think he was a bit. Um, yeah, he got it from his grandmother from the other side. I think they talked about it, and yeah, he started calling him names. So yeah, that got him even madder. And I told my youngest son, okay, that's not okay. That's not how we do things. That's not how I brought you up. I don't understand where this is coming from. But now, of course, I understand that this is from an 8-year-old boy. It was the only way that he could rebel against his stepdad. And yeah, the other two, they acted in their autism way. They got angry, they got upset, they shut down, and yeah, it was a very difficult period. And in the beginning, I had the co-parency. That 1 week they stayed with me, and the other week they stayed with my ex-husband. And the week that we were alone, my husband and I, it was fine. Well, that's yeah, fine-ish. It was not that bad, not as bad as when the kids were there. Let's say it like that. And yeah, when the kids were there, it was hell. It was like I was always put in the middle. It was like my husband, they did something that he didn't like, and he started shouting at them. And then he turned to me and he said, "Why don't you do anything? You're their mother. Tell them to obey." I said, "Well, like, I'm sorry. Even if you're right, let's say you're right. Let's pretend you're right, because mostly it was like he had these demands that were not normal for children. It was like, yeah." And then I said, okay, even if you were right, even if I could agree with you, that's not the way to handle kids. If you're pointing the gun and shooting at my kids, you cannot expect me to go and stand by your side and shoot at them with you. So the only way I saw was being a good mom was getting in between, in the middle, and saying, okay, even if you're right, I cannot support you because this is not the way you handle kids. And it was always, yeah, and then he got very upset and very mad at me, and he was always like, he was frustrated in his work, in his colleagues, in his past relationships, his bankruptcy, and my kids, and it got poured out at me. I always said to him, I feel like I'm your, yeah, in Dutch we call pispal. I don't know what it's called in English. It's like, yeah, I'm always the bucket that you throw all what's upsetting into. And
So how did you feel about this?
I was always feeling trapped in the middle. I very soon in the relationship realized that it was not okay to be treated this way. But you know, with a narcissist, you get like trapped within a week. You get trapped and trauma bonded, and you get mostly you also get like this recognition from the past, from your youth, that you recognize um, the the exchange the exchange of energy, you recognize it as a relationship that you had with one of your upbringers, whether it is a parent or someone else in your youth. Then you recognize this is like, okay, these ups and downs, they're normal. That's how a relationship's supposed to be. But then, of course, the abuse is also there, and you start thinking, okay, this is not okay. But my surviving mechanism is rationalizing. It's like, okay, whenever someone does something to me and I can find a reason behind it that is logical or acceptable, I can park it somewhere. It's not like, okay, it's acceptable, but it's understandable. I can park it and try to pretend for a while it doesn't exist or that it's fine. It's just, okay, let's just get over it. It's not worthy of making a drama out of it, or yeah, blowing up my relationship for it. So, but yeah, of course, there were like thousands of these incidents that got parked somewhere. So, after a while, you start seeing, it's okay, can't hide it anymore. I can't take it anymore.
Did he physically abuse you?
He did, not as often, but of course, once is too much. So I've always been a woman that said before, no man is gonna touch me until they touch you.
Okay.
And then it's like, okay, he didn't mean to. He just wanted to slap me a little bit, and he hit me a bit harder than he intended to do. And afterwards, whenever you think in retrospect of this relationship, you say like, my God, what was I thinking? Why did I tell myself it was not so bad? He hit me. What was not bad about it? Still, yeah, afterwards it's a bit. But as I said, you're in this trauma bond. There's all these kind of mechanisms that keep you in this relationship, and not in the least the anxiety that you're living in on a daily basis. You're always walking on eggshells, and you're always afraid to be triggering him, while actually whatever always say, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Whatever you do, it's always gonna get held against you.
And when was the moment you decided now it's enough?
Well, in the beginning, for about 8 years, I thought that it was an alcohol problem. And then was this short period that he went to the AA and tried to turn his life around, or it seemed to be anyway, or he made me believe it. And then I thought the alcohol was gone, and I noticed the behavior stays. So what is this? He's not turning into this nice guy that I hoped he would be turning into. The alcohol is gone, so what is happening here? And then I ended up actually, I don't know how, but I ended up at this YouTube channel of Dr. Ramani. And she wrote a book, Surviving, what is it called? Should I Stay or Should I Go? Surviving a Relationship with a Narcissist. This book was my life savior. I started watching her YouTube channel, and I read the book, and what's like, she had in the beginning this checklist of 30 characteristics of a narcissist, and I was like, okay, check, 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 maybe, and I think I ended up with 27 certain and 3 perhaps. I remember I was like sitting there with the book, and I said, okay, so there it is. And I started thinking about all these kind of situations, and it was like this big puzzle. all added up. I was like, okay, this is how it is. This is what has been happening these 10 years. And I was like, thank God it has a name. Thank God I'm not crazy. But apparently, it is never going to change.
And what were some of these characteristics?
Yeah, the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Mainly also like the sudden changes of character. I always thought in the beginning he was like that his problem wasn't like narcissism, but like a multiple identity, something like that. The yeah, the lack of empathy, that he would pretend a lot to be an empathetic man, but he really wasn't. He was like he would get upset about a plane crash where all these children died. And then I told him, unrelated to that, of course, on another moment that I was feeling hurtful because of that he abused me again. And he was like, yeah, okay, I'm sorry, didn't mean to. Get over it. Just put it under the mat, sweep it under the mat. And it was like, yeah, it was like he was like this big words and nothing in between. He always, yeah, he always felt like a bit jealous. He always said to me like he thought I was a nice person, and it was always like he was resenting me for it, for being a nice person. That he did stuff and I didn't get mad. And sometimes he asked me, "Why don't you get mad?" I said, "I'm sorry, I don't get mad. I just get very, very sad. I'm very much hurt about how you treat me." And then yeah, I should have get mad. I should have get angry. Of course, perhaps then I wouldn't have tolerated the shit. But yeah, it's a lack of empathy, the changes of mood swings, yeah.
Could you get any support out of the people surrounded by you? So maybe your parents or uncles, aunties, friends, colleagues?
I have this small circle of 6 very close girlfriends, and they were like my salvation, actually. So they never questioned me. They never told me, "What are you still doing there, girl? Get out of there." So they were very patient. They listened to me. Well, I must say I have a degree in psychology, and they also had one. Well, no, 3 of them, and they were like very understanding. And they said, "Okay, we understand what you're coming from," and they never judged me. They never judged me for not leaving. I had this one friend who did, and yeah, she was like a lifetime friend from in kindergarten, and all of a sudden she just stopped. She said, "Okay, if you are going to put up with what your husband is doing to you, then okay, don't want to be friends with you anymore." And she just cut me off. That was that. But the other ones, the 6 ones, they stood by me. They listened to me. They let me tell my story, and they never judged me. And that's been, yeah, that's the only way that you can keep a social circle and know you can rely on them, depend on them whenever you need help. Because in the beginning, I didn't reach out to my parents. I didn't reach out to any other family members, colleagues, nobody. I think my close colleague at work, she knew what was happening, but yeah, also she didn't judge me. So, and for the rest, I was so much ashamed. How can you tell people that you're being abused on a daily basis, and just put up with it? Th- that's yeah. Even if, yeah, I understand that people don't understand how you can remain for 10 years in such a relationship. So, but at the time, I wasn't ready to leave. So even if there were like 100 people who told me, "Girl, get out," I would just have cut them off because I said, okay, I'm not ready. Don't push me, because if you push me, then I get lost. I'm living in this daily anxiety, in this daily like Stockholm syndrome, like being loyal to the person that's abusing you. Um, yeah, these mechanisms that work from your youth, your anxiety to get separated or to be dismissed or anything. So you just, and also your self-worth is so low that you think, okay, this person is loving me and this is the price that I have to pay for it. And okay, then I'll have the price to pay. Then I'll pay the price. I accept the way that I'm being treated because otherwise it's that or nothing. And it's a whole process of building up your strength and getting to a point then saying, okay, I'd rather have nothing than this. I deserve better than this. I don't want to put up with it anymore. So yeah, and that's the point that I don't. It's very difficult to explain. People ask me that all the time. So, at what point did you finally make the decision? I said, I don't have a clue. At one time, it's like you have this anxiety that keeps you in there, and you have the need to get out. And as long as the need is lower than the anxiety, then you stay in, and then it comes to this, and then one day the need gets higher, and then you're able to get out of it. And what when that day is, it's unpredictable. I don't know. It goes up, it builds up very, very slowly, and at a certain point you say, okay, I'm done.
And how does it still impact you and your children?
Yeah, as I said, my children, yeah, they're both in therapy. They're both taking antidepressants. They have anxiety. They've had anger issues. So whenever they started going to therapy, it's getting better. But one of them was like the first year after I separated from my husband. He was very, very angry at me, and I understood it completely. It's like it was my fault. I let the guy get into this household, so it's my fault that you had to experience this. So I get it. You're angry at me, and you're allowed to be angry at me. And yeah, it took him about a year, but now we got very, very closer together, but they're still suffering and also repeating the kind of relationship in their personal relationships. They also had like these toxic people in their life. So, and I feel very much responsible for that. It's like, okay, I gave you a bad example. The only thing I can do now is try to give a good example with my new fiance, with showing them now this is how love, safe love, is supposed to look like.
Okay. So, what piece of advice would you give to others in the same situation?
First of all, it's like keep a close circle of friends. Look for friends who support you and who don't um, who don't
Abandon you.
yeah,
Yeah.
they don't want to push you. So who accept you and understand you and just will stand by you. And if you're experiencing people around you that make you feel even worse, just cut them off. You really need a small circle of supportive people. Um, what I also say to them is like abuse is never acceptable. Even if there are still reasons why you can't leave yet in this sort of relationship, you have to take care of yourself. You have to rebuild yourself, find your strength in activities outside this relationship, in friends outside this relationship, and say to yourself each day, abuse is not tolerable. I deserve better. And reach out to people. Don't feel ashamed. There's no shame in being stuck in this kind of mechanisms that are normal in narcissistic relationships. So it's not. Don't feel ashamed. Reach out to people. Talk to people. Don't let yourself get isolated. So
Okay.
that's very important. The connection with people is what will you get out eventually.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you. It's a very heavy story, so thank you for sharing. And I definitely think others will get help when they hear this. Maybe they can relate to it. So thank you for sharing it. I don't think it's easy to do, and there's a need to do so. So thank you for your courage and for being here today. And if you're interested, make sure to watch our other videos and follow us on our socials. Goodbye.